So good afternoon, or good morning, good evening, depending on where you're joining us from around the world. My name is Claire Treverton and I am from TAC Events, and I'm delighted to welcome you all to this interactive breakout session from Tech Mahindra. I have my colleagues here waiting to give their fantastic presentation. I have Premanand Sheshadri, who is Practice Head Energy and Utilities at Tech Mahindra, and Pawan Khilari, who is Europe, Australia and New Zealand Practice Head for Utilities also. So we've got some great people here to deliver a presentation to you this afternoon. Just a little bit of housekeeping before the guys start. We are recording this session, so if for whatever reason you have to drop out, you will be able to find the recording on the event platform directly after we finish. This is an interactive session, so we very much welcome any questions from the floor. May I ask that while the guys are giving their presentation, that you type your questions into the chat facility here. Once they've finished presenting, then by all means feel free to turn on your microphones or indeed your cameras if you'd like to also just ask your questions verbally to the guys. We've got 30 minutes for the session. If we do, however, find that we're running over, we've got an extra 10 minutes if we need it. So without further ado, I would like to hand over to my colleague Preem. Thank you, Preem.
Thank you, Claire. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. On behalf of Tech Mahindra, we welcome you all to this webinar on Grid of the Future and Inevitable Journey. Let me start with a short introduction. I'm Premanand Sheshadri. You can call me Prem. I have around 3 decades of industry experience, predominantly in the power industry. I had the utilities solution practice for Tech Mahindra. Over to Pawan.
Hi everyone, I'm Pawan. I'm part of the Energy and Utilities Vertical Business Unit for TechM as Prem. I have been in the domain for more than 16 years, playing varied roles. In TechM, I am a practice head for Europe and ANZ, responsible for strategy, business growth, and solutions.
Okay, let us start. Before we talk about the future grid, it is important to understand the challenges that are there in the present vertically integrated distribution network. Installation of distributed solar generation is happening at breakneck speed. You might have seen in this same event itself, many speakers have talked about this. This can lead to a local consumption becoming greater than the demand itself. And this is already happening in Australia. The generation at somewhere around in the mid of the afternoon, in few places, it has exceeded the demand itself. And the rates are moving on the negative side. More customers are beginning to use battery storage. In fact, they are using the electric vehicle storage to store the battery and then begin to use the energy during the peak demand period. In addition to this, electric vehicle and smart device controllers are changing the way the customer are consuming, or power consumption behaviors are changing. Community solar parks are coming up. And this is going to be a major source of power generation in the near future. Fast growing electric vehicle charging stations are putting unplanned load onto the distribution transformers. More and more self-sustained smart cities and smart villages are coming up with their own microgrids. Adding to the problem is the high cost in maintaining this existing infrastructure. And in addition, the climate change and the social responsibilities to reduce the carbon footprint is pushing the government to bring in renewable-centric policies. These are the existing problems. This everyone knows, we all know, and this is going to affect the present grid. And is the transition happening in our grid? Yeah, the transition is happening around us. If you see earlier days, the each of the units were huge. That is, there were very big power generation stations, and the distribution grids are covering an entire city or an entire state. But when you see in the present scenario, the distributed energy resources are small. Few of them are even kilowatt size distributed. That is, generations are happening. Microgrids are coming up at a high speed. The consumption is not in one direction, but both the directions are happening. The electric flow is beginning to happen. That is, the consumers are beginning to become prosumers. They generate their own electricity and they are pumping back into the grid. The change is happening around us. Now, before why do we need to take this seriously? Why do we need to take these changes seriously? Let me present few statistics. These are taken from international journals and energy magazines. The global utilization, the utilities microgrid capacity is growing at the rate of around 19% per annum. If you see the power generation that is growing globally, it's hovering somewhere around 2%. And if you see developing countries, the generation is somewhere around 7 to 9%. So the 19% of growth that we are seeing in the microgrid industry is very, very high. Next, the microgrid is expected to grow to somewhere around 3. I'm hearing some audio. Can keep yourself muted, please.
Okay.
Please, we can go on mute. Yeah, I'll continue. See, the microgrid is going to generate somewhere around 3.7 gigawatts of power by 2020.
Registration form.
Claire, is there a way for
index page for company created.
So if everybody could make sure their microphones are muted just until the end of the session, and then once Prem and Pawan have stopped presenting, then by all means you can unmute your mics at that point. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. See, I'm continuing with my presentation. The microgrid is expected to grow to around 3.7 gigawatts by 2020. In fact, if you see the old world's consumption, this is very small, but if you see the percentage growth, annual percentage of growth, it is very high. Every quarter, if you see somewhere around 6,600 microgrid projects are coming up. So you might know what is the volume of microgrids that are coming up year on year. And there is a investment. The prediction is there is going to be an investment of around $40 billion by 2029 on the microgrid projects. Now, in addition to this, few interesting facts. When a survey was conducted, around 62% of the respondents felt that the rapidly increasing renewable and DER are the most destructive forces that will have in our distribution network. And not only that, more than 46% of the respondents felt that the biggest threat is the risk-averse culture of the utility business. They feel that they are safe and the present distribution network can handle the changes that is happening around us. But the fact is something different. The present distribution network is undergoing a lot of stress, and if we don't plan for the future, it will be very difficult to recover the damage that is happening to our grid. Are we ready for the change that is happening towards us? Do you think the present distribution network is fit for the future need? Do we know what is going to be the future grid? At least do we know what is the path that we need to take to reach the future grid? In present, distribution is not designed for the microgrid. And can it accommodate this microgrid or the distributed energy resources? Where will it fit in? Not proper researches have been done. No proper path has been set. The fact is, customers are driving this change, and most of the risk averting utility industry is doing some half-hearted quick fixes. There are exceptions. Few utilities are seeing this change coming towards them. They have taken steps. They have tried to find out what is going to be the future. And they are trying to build a model how to navigate or how to move towards the future. Let us see what SAP has planned for us. SAP is helping us in our movement towards the future grid. SAP has understood the importance of prosumers, and it is moving towards prosumer-centric approach. Our existing customers are our new prosumers, and every prosumer group has a potential to move towards a smart grid. And that's what you're seeing in this whole journey that SAP has put forward for us. Essentially, SAP's prosumer-centric approach addresses two major areas. One, to address the immediate business challenges to build a digital foundation for the future. Two, collect the data on customer and asset behavior so that utility can build a model to unravel the future. SAP has the right building blocks to unravel the data that are needed to plan for the future. These includes machine learning, blockchain, IoT, mobile devices, big data, and predictive analytics. This will help us in building a strong foundation. Let me also explain what TechM has planned, or how TechM is foreseeing the path towards the future grid. What you're seeing on the right, might be a plausible future grid scenario. So it's TechM's point of view. The future grid may be an interconnection of many microgrids. The distribution company may be supplying electricity to microgrids, and these prosumer groups may not only be consuming the electricity from the distribution network, but also be pushing the electricity or selling the electricity to other nearby microgrids or nearby other consumers. The distribution company may facilitate trading between microgrids. There are many power trade exchange. There may be power trade exchanges that might be coming up. In fact, few advanced markets are already planning to build a power exchange. We may be moving towards a gridless future. Utility industry need to re-innovate themselves. Otherwise, they will be left behind, or they will be struggling to manage the existing vertically integrated distribution network. To start with, a strong foundation is needed, and SAP is well positioned to provide us the building blocks that are necessary to build this foundation. Highest importance needs to be given in fixing the present data problem. This will help us to model and predict the future. Here again, SAP is well positioned. Then you can build a forecast model and plan for the intermediate steps that are needed to see how we can move towards the future grid. These intermediate steps will set the ball rolling to build a very strong future grid. The future grid needs to be resilient, flexible, and ready to manage dynamic changes. I'll hand over here to Pawan. He will explain how Tech Mahindra is going to help us to build this foundation and move forward towards this future grid. Pawan, over to you.
Thanks, Prem. So Prem talked about the challenges of the traditional grid, its transitional journey, and introduced us to the concept of future grid, which constitutes these four areas which are sitting at the center: multiple energy sources, isolated microgrids, microgenerations, and power storage. Now let us create the whole picture to concentrate at the periphery and take the next steps to understand few critical aspects and the benefit that the future grid will reap, which will in turn determine its success. The first area and benefit being the asset connectivity, optimization, and effective operation. Smart grids will generate more power through existing systems. The harmonization of local distribution with reduction of power flow-based will optimize the asset connectivity and its effective operations, reducing the grid congestion and potential outages. 5G for an intelligent utility enterprise will be the backbone of the smart network, with characteristics like lower latency, massive device density, paving the way for dense IoT deployments on the edge. We're going to talk about edge in some time now. Not to forget the faster data enabling applications with larger bandwidth. Empowering prosumers. It was rightly pointed out by Miguel Gasper in his keynote speech few days back. Prosumers will be the heart of future grids because they will themselves control it. So it is essential to empower them with the right technology, analyze the behavioral insights, inducing them into demand response programs to maintain a very good balance of the load curve in the future grid concept. Adoption of the renewable energy has been fantastic, but integrating these renewable energies into and also managing the O&M and integrating them into the current grids and the smart grids is going to be the most critical factor for the growth and sustainability of the grid. The other areas which you see below are the self-healing networks which would solve the problems of the grids on its own. Open electricity markets with flexible trading environments, free outages and quality issues for the grid, which could be the power of 21st century, and the DER. Hence, to make these future grids realistic, compelling and sustainable, we need an equally robust, agnostic and ever-evolving technology architecture. You will agree with me. This will augment and address various business technology disruptions and future paradigm shifts. So now moving ahead, let me present to you our point of view and the architecture, which is 5G powered, edge-driven, IoT-enabled microgrid as a service. The first component which you see is nothing but two different public networks and private networks which are powered by 5G. Now these comprises of different actors like mobile devices, customers, which could be the residential, non-residential customers, the vendors, the generation assets, the field services, and DER. The second most important component being the TechM offerings, powered by SAP for Utilities, addressing all the components which are mentioned in the previous slide, like the customer experience, prosumer billing, asset intelligence, workforce, and so on. The unique proposition of these offerings is that they're segregated into business apps and infra apps, which are built on a service-oriented framework sitting on the edge. Now, we have heard about edge a lot. Now, let us understand the concept of the edge computing. Using a common example of a security camera on our premises, rather than sending all the heavy files of the movements to the cloud, we just send the files which contain the suspicious movements, identifying the break-in. Now we have a very, very similar strategy to plan for the future grid based on the given apps which I just mentioned powered by edge, reducing the cost, bandwidth, and increased processing speed. Lastly, the entire architecture is layered with the connectivity powered by 5G and edge as an edge layer as the base, and the top, the experience layer and the engagement layer, forming these applications which we just spoke, powered by TechM and SAP. And in the center, you have the intelligence data with the business and the integrated layer with the cognitive data-driven and IoT approach. So this is our architecture. And let us now see, going ahead, to understand more better the application of this given architecture we just discussed. Let us look at the use case. Now this use case is of a connected asset and a workforce, which is one of the key components constituting a 5G and the microgrids. Now if you look at this picture, it is nothing but a future microgrid world where you would have different distributed power plants, distributed generation schemes, the solar and wind farms by different stakeholders or even by the transmission distribution companies connected with smart meters, with different customers. So now, if you see the different stakeholders would need a system to capture the images. Now, this system could be a drone-based condition monitoring system or a surveillance system. It could also be a LiDAR-based surveillance system or even a satellite image system. Now, these systems would capture different images of the entire linear assets or the different assets constituting these microgrids. Now, what we would do, we would interconnect these images into an app, which is an edge-based anomaly detection app. Now, this app is sitting on the edge. What this app would do, it would have an AI/ML-based proprietary algorithm to look at the images and identify a defect or an anomaly. The moment the anomaly is detected, it gets verified, it is checked for the different parameters, and then it automatically creates a task in SAP Intelligent Asset Management System. The moment this task is created, it gets integrated via job, which needs to be scheduled in SAP FSM, which is Field Services Management System, also sitting on the cloud. Now, the most important aspect of this job allocation is the types of the job, whether the job is a high-skill job or a low-skill job. Now, you don't have to worry about that, and we can allocate, so FSM can automatically allocate the job to any nearby technician without worrying about his skills. And this is because we have another integration of AR/VR based capability to integrate the Google Glass and having him a feature to actually assist this non-skilled technician with a command center engineer, which is sitting remotely with a remote intervention for safety, faster turnaround, reducing the mean time to repair and service downtimes. The completion of the job of this technician will then automatically generate a completion asset management system. So this entire integrated landscape consisting of the anomaly detection app, the SAP apps or SAP solutions, which are FSM and IAM sitting on the cloud, the job allocation and the AR/VR integration will generate massive benefits. Now let us look at them. So the biggest benefit would be increasing the daily job completion rate by 40%, improving on-time performance by 30%. This entire edge-based processing will not have the utilities worried about petty issues. They will only have to concentrate and on the predictive nature, telling them about the problem which has occurred much early and saving the resources and the cost, reducing dispatch staff by 45% hence. The non-skill based automation will decrease the miles driven by these technicians, cut the overtime of these technicians by 75%. These massive numbers have been tested, and hence we can say that it improves the customer experience and satisfaction by 90%. So actually what I want to say here is basically this use case is not just a POC, but it has been employed and deployed in one of our customers in India and across some of the global utilities in ANZ. So now moving ahead, let us see what we can do today to embark this journey. There are 4 important points which a customer needs to do to embark this journey. The first point being fixing your data today. As you see, this is a complex world of microgrids which we are going towards. So the volumes are going to be staggering. So the data growth volume and strategy is one of the most key factors which the customers need to address. The second most important factor is building a future-proof cybersecurity strategy, which would include building various controls like the asset controls, improving the resiliency of the system, and also ensuring the whitelisting of different products and applications if the system has to be attacked. Information controls for information at the rest and in transit. Cybersecurity controls to ensure continuous compliance with the standards, to address any potential threats in future. And finally, the network controls to manage and protect data transmission across the network. The third most important aspect we just saw in the use case is the enterprise automation and machine learning. The use case can be simple, but we can elevate the use case by the use of technology disruptors like ML and AI, and we just saw in that previous use case. And lastly, but not the least, we have been the fans of 5G. So 5G is a very important aspect to be put on the roadmap for any enterprise with a near-term, mid-term, and a long-term goal, making room for future devices and technology disruptions. So that gets us to the end of this, and I'd like to actually take you or have you leaving with this statement that microgrid adoption will have organizations paying off significant technology debt. So we need to plan starting today. So this gets us to the end of the session. By answering this question, why us? We look at the three important components. The first being, we have years of domain experience, building platform solutions, solving most complex problems, including the one we spoke. Considering our Mahindra Group legacy, we are having our own renewable generation arm, where we design, build, integrate, and operate these large plants. We own our own water utility, which is the most efficient utility with a less than 5% of non-revenue water. We also deploy microgrids globally. So our presence in this entire value chain makes us better equipped to empathize with the customer and solve the complex problems. From SAP perspective, or when SAP is concerned, we are having a large workforce, about 900 plus SAP instances and 500K plus users with deep expertise in utilities globally. We have a very strong SAP partnership, including being a GSSP partner, a RISE with SAP partner, and industry cloud. We have been chosen as the leaders by ISG in mid-market segment for utilities globally. And last but not the least, networking and telecom is our bread and butter. We started with that and come up with a very long way, helping our customers adopting 5G. So with transmission distribution companies moving towards future grids, we have a major role to play in this future. So thank you. So we will move to the question and answers, if there are any.
Prem and Pawan, there are no questions that have been typed into the chat, but if anybody would like to turn their microphone on and ask the guys a question directly, please do so.
Yes, Phil Van Dam here from SAP in Australia. Just a question, I guess, from a microgrid is kind of interesting because it almost fits in between the distributor and the retailer. So I'm just wondering how you see that sort of challenge that, you know, a microgrid really has to be operated by the distributor or potentially, but the retailer is the one who's going to be dealing with the sort of, you know, energy trading and charging between the different participants in the microgrid. I'm just wondering how you sort of deal with the interaction between the retailer and distributor in the microgrid scenario.
Pawan, shall I take this one?
Yeah, you can take. Yeah, I'll add my parts.
Sure, thank you. See, the present distributor retailer model, so I really doubt if the same can be extended when might be 10 years down the line when we get into a microgrid kind of a scenario. Because what at least from TechM's point of view, what we foresee is that the whole of the distribution network is going to be having multiple, what you can say, microgrids. So the retailer may end up supplying to a microgrid than to end consumer. This microgrid will be a self-sustained or what is that? It has its own generation unit, it has its own storage unit, it has its own distribution network, and it buys power from the directly from maybe major power generators or maybe from the major distribution company. So the interaction is going to be multi-directional. That's how I foresee. So the model that we are seeing today, the supplier distribution model, that may begin to change or that may begin to evolve into a much more complex interactive model than a linear model that we are seeing today.
Yeah, and just to add, Prem, here, that from Australia's point of view, if you see distributions, right, because of power grid, they directly do not communicate with the customers apart from the basic meters where they are the meter operators, right? So the retailers play a major role with more prosumers coming into play. So their integration with the customers is going to be key in terms of managing the microgrids and enabling the prosumers to have a better customer experience. So but the distributions would play a role as well if they are also integrating with the retailers in a way to help them maintaining this network in a much better way. So this is a three-way combination which has to work well for the success of the future grid.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, and maybe microgrid, so maybe retailers may evolve into a microgrid service provider, or
yeah,
they may be setting up their own microgrids.
Yeah, okay, makes sense. And it's I just drop a comment. It's quite interesting. We're seeing some of the distributor companies down here actually start investing in a central battery storage system. So almost a microgrid, but still connected to the distribution network. And then the individual consumers will pay a monthly fee to have that ability to use that battery storage. So really, as I generate power from my rooftop solar, if I'm generating more power, I can stick it in the central battery storage, and then come night time, I can draw back off that and use the power back into my own environment. So we're seeing quite a few of the distribution companies starting to invest in that type of model as well, which is quite interesting.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
yeah.
So that change is beginning to happen.
Yeah. Good. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your question.
Thanks, Phil. Any questions from anybody else? Now's your opportunity.
So you can also reach out to us on the booth, because we have very interesting solution, including this one on the booth as well. So if there are any questions further, you can also reach out to us on the booth.
Thank you, Pawan. Okay, so if there are no further questions, then it just remains to say thank you so much to both Prem and Pawan from TechM. A very, very interesting and insightful presentation, I think we can all agree. The recording of which, as mentioned at the beginning, will be available on the event platform after this straight away, so anybody can refer back to this at any moment. So still lots of additional sessions available to everybody in the next few hours left of the conference. There's just a slide here showing bits and bobs that are left. I believe the next two tracks after these breakout sessions will be the digital transformation and the innovation tracks. So please, obviously, feel free to join any of the presentations there if you'd like to. And yes, I think that's all for today's session here. Again, a great big thank you to the guys at TechM, and thank you to everybody for joining us today.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye.